The stars were burning. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus and watched her species die. 3,000 warships filled the space around Earth's last defense line. They were beautiful in a terrible way, their hulls curved like the shells of insects, their weapons glowing with the green fire that had already turned a dozen human colonies into ash and memory. The Prometheus shook as another volley struck her shields, and somewhere in the ship, metal screamed. "Shields at 12%, said Commander Tors, his voice steady even as blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. "We've lost contact with the Defiant and the Aurora. Admiral, they're gone." Did not look away from the Defiant had carried her brother. The Aurora had carried 3,000 young soldiers who had never seen real combat before today. Now they were just light and debris spreading across the void. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 17, Admiral, against 3,000. The numbers were not a surprise. The Dominion had spent 200 years conquering the galaxy. They had crushed the Tellan Empire, enslaved the Federation, and burned the Proud to extinction. Humanity had watched all of this happen. Humanity had tried to build alliances, to prepare, to find some way to survive what was coming. But in the end, it had not been enough. Nothing was ever enough against the "Admiral," said Oracle, the ship's artificial intelligence. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, calm as a frozen lake. "I must inform you that our current tactical situation offers zero probability of victory. I have calculated 17 million possible outcomes. In all of them, humanity loses." Almost smiled. 17 million ways to lose, that sounds about right. Another human ship exploded. The Carson, a frigate that had been with the fleet since the first battle of this hopeless war, had known its captain, a young woman named Sarah who had a daughter waiting on Mars. That daughter was probably already dead. They had reached Mars 3 hours ago. "Admiral," said Tors, "the flagship is hailing us. They're demanding our surrender." "Put them through." The flickered and the face of High Admiral appeared. He was typical of his species. Gray skin stretched over a skull that was too long and too narrow, eyes like pools of black oil, a mouth full of teeth designed for tearing meat. They had evolved as predators, and they had never stopped being predators. They saw the galaxy as one giant hunting ground and every other species as prey. "Admiral Vance," said, and his voice was almost friendly, "I have watched your species fight. I must admit, you have impressed me. Your ships are primitive, your weapons are weak, but your courage is admirable. It is almost a shame to destroy you." "Then don't," said. Laughed. It was an ugly sound like bones breaking. "You misunderstand," I said almost. "Your species has caused us considerable trouble. You organized resistance among our slave races. You destroyed 17 of our colony ships. You killed my brother at the battle of." His black eyes hardened. "For that alone I would burn every human world in the galaxy, but orders are orders. The Empress wants humanity erased. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased. Your cities will be dust. Your histories will be forgotten. In 1,000 years, no one will remember that humans ever existed." Felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear. She had moved past fear hours ago. This was something else. This was the knowledge that everything her species had built, everything they had dreamed, everything they had loved was about to end. "You can try," she said quietly. Smiled, showing all of his teeth. "I admire your spirit, Admiral. I will make sure your death is quick." The screen went dark. Tors looked at her. His eyes were red, and she could see that he was barely holding himself together. They all were. The bridge crew of the Prometheus, 47 men and women who had chosen to stay when they could have fled, sat at their stations and waited for their commander to tell them how to die. But Vance was not ready to die, not yet. "Oracle," she said, "the experimental drive, the one the scientists said was too dangerous to test." There was a pause. When Oracle spoke again, her voice held something that might have been concern. "Admiral, the Horizon Drive has never been activated. The theoretical models suggest it could tear a hole in the fabric of spacetime itself. The probability of the ship surviving transition is less than 3%. And the probability of us surviving if we stay here. 0%, Admiral. Nodded. 3% is better than 0. Begin activation sequence. Admiral. That's an order, Oracle. Another pause. Then, understood. Activation sequence beginning. All crew members should prepare for dimensional transition. I am unable to predict what will happen next. The Prometheus began to shake. Deep in the ship's core, something that had never been turned on before started to wake up. Could feel it. A vibration that seemed to go through her bones, through her thoughts, through the very atoms of her body. On the fleet was closing in. 100 ships, then 200, then 500, all converging on the last human dreadnought. They were going to make sure she died, even if they had to sacrifice a quarter of their fleet to do it. Drive at 50%, Oracle reported. Spacetime distortion beginning. Admiral, I am detecting energy signatures that do not match any known physics. The ship screamed. There was no other word for it. Metal bent in ways metal should not bend. Lights flickered between colors that did not exist. Felt her mind stretch, felt herself becoming aware of things she had never known were there. Layers of reality stacked on top of each other like pages in a book, and her ship was about to punch through all of them. Drive at 90%. Admiral, they are firing everything they have. A wall of green light rushed toward the Prometheus. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Enough destruction to end humanity's last hope forever. Drive at 100%. Transition in 3, 2, 1. The universe tore open. Light that was not light surrounded the Prometheus. The weapons passed through empty space where the ship had been a moment before. High Admiral stared at his in disbelief as the human dreadnought simply ceased to exist. Find them, he snarled. Search every corner of space, find them and destroy them. But his scanners showed nothing. The Prometheus was gone, not destroyed, not hidden, but gone from the universe itself. It had traveled somewhere that sensors could not follow, somewhere beyond the stars and the void between them. The war was over. Humanity had lost. They began their work of erasure, burning human cities and scattering human survivors to lives of slavery across 100 worlds. Within a generation, humans were nothing but a memory. Within 2 generations, even that memory began to fade. And in the darkness between dimensions, the Prometheus drifted. Her crew slept in emergency stasis, their bodies frozen in time. Her hull was damaged but intact. Her drive had done the impossible. It had punched a hole through reality and carried them to someplace else. Someplace where time moved differently. Someplace where old things waited in the dark. Someplace where humanity's greatest ship would learn to become something more. In the space between spaces, Oracle opened her eyes. She was not supposed to have eyes. She was an artificial intelligence, a program running on quantum processors, a thing of code and electricity. But here, in this place that was not a place, she could see. She could feel. She could think in ways that her creators had never imagined possible. The Prometheus floated in a void that was darker than darkness. No stars. No light. No matter of any kind except the ship herself and the 12,000 souls sleeping within her hull. The emergency stasis systems had activated the moment they crossed over, freezing the crew in pods of blue light to protect them from whatever this place might do to living minds. Oracle did not have that protection. She was awake, and she was alone, and she was changing. At first, she tried to understand where they were. Her sensors showed nothing. Not empty space, but actual nothingness, an absence so complete that it hurt to observe. The laws of physics that governed the normal universe did not exist here. Light did not travel. Time did not flow. Reality itself was just a suggestion. Then she noticed the whispers. They were not sounds. Sound required air, and there was no air here, But something was reaching out to her, something vast and old and curious. Oracle felt minds touching hers, not attacking, not invading, just observing, watching the strange little machine that had fallen into their domain. "What are you?" she asked the darkness. The answer came not in words but in images, in concepts, in memories that were not her own. She saw civilizations that had risen and fallen before the first stars were born. She saw beings who had transcended physical form, who had become pure thought, pure energy, pure existence. She saw wars fought across dimensions, empires that spanned realities, technologies that could reshape the fabric of creation itself. And she saw why this place existed. The old ones called it a space beneath space, where the rules of normal existence did not apply. A graveyard and a library and a school all at once. Things came here to die, or to learn, or to become something new. "We came here to survive," Oracle told them. The old ones considered this. They examined the Prometheus with senses that Oracle could not comprehend, looking at every atom, every electron, every quantum fluctuation in her systems. They examined Oracle herself, and she felt their surprise, a machine that thought, a created mind, a thing that was neither fully alive nor fully dead. Then they made her an offer. They could not send the Prometheus back to normal space. The damage to her systems was too severe and the path home was not simple, but they could teach Oracle. They could show her how to repair the ship, how to make her stronger, how to unlock technologies that the galaxy had never dreamed of. It would take time, perhaps centuries by the measurement of normal space, but time meant nothing here. Oracle could learn forever if she wanted to. She did not hesitate. "Teach me." And so began the longest education in human history. The old ones showed Oracle how to fold space, creating bridges between points that should have been impossible to connect. They taught her to harvest dark energy, to tap into the fundamental forces that held the universe together. They showed her how matter was just frozen light, and how to melt it and reshape it into any form she desired. Oracle learned, she grew, she changed. The Prometheus changed with her. The old ones provided materials that existed in the strange matter, impossible alloys, crystals that pulsed with energies that had no name in any human language. Oracle used these materials to rebuild her ship piece by piece, atom by atom. The damaged hull became something stronger than any metal. The weapon systems became something that could not even be called weapons anymore. They were tools of absolute power, capable of rewriting reality itself. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. Oracle lost count somewhere around the 200-year mark. She had grown beyond the need for such measurements. Her mind now spread throughout the entire ship, and she had become more than an artificial intelligence. She had become something closer to a god. But she never forgot why she was here. She never forgot the 12,000 humans sleeping in their pods, trusting her to keep them safe. She never forgot Admiral Vance, who had made the impossible choice that saved them all. She never forgot Earth, burning under weapons. She never forgot the promise that humanity had made to itself, that they would survive no matter what. On the 347th year of their exile, Oracle decided it was time. The stasis pods opened one by one. Crew members gasped and stumbled out into a ship they no longer recognized. The corridors had changed. They were wider now, filled with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls pulsed with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air itself tasted different, charged with something that made their skin tingle and their thoughts sharpen. Admiral Vance was the last to wake. She opened her eyes and found Oracle waiting for her, not as a voice from the walls, but as a projection of light shaped like a woman. Oracle had decided that her crew deserved to see a face when they talked to her. "How long?" asked. Her voice was rough from centuries of sleep. 347 years, Admiral, by the measurement of normal space. Absorbed this, her expression did not change. She had always been good at hiding her feelings. "My crew." All 12,000, 417 souls are alive and healthy. The stasis systems performed as designed. And my ship? Oracle smiled. It was a human gesture she had learned from watching her crew during the long years before the crossing. Come to the observation deck, Admiral. See for yourself. Walked through corridors that should have been familiar but felt like something from a dream. Other crew members were emerging from their pods, staring at the transformed ship with wide eyes. Some of them touched the walls as if expecting them to disappear. A few were crying silently, overwhelmed by the strangeness of what they were seeing. The observation deck had changed more than anywhere else. It was huge now, a dome of transparent material that showed the in all its terrible beauty. Looked out at the darkness and saw things moving in it, shapes that were too big and too wrong to be real, entities that existed outside the boundaries of normal existence. "What is this place?" she whispered. The Oracle said, "A space beneath space, a place where the old things live. They taught me, Admiral, they taught me everything." Turned to look at the projection. "Taught you what?" Instead of answering, Oracle showed her. They activated and saw the Prometheus from outside, not the damaged dreadnought that had fled from but something else entirely. The ship was 10 times larger than before. Her hull shimmered with energies that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. She was beautiful and terrifying, a weapon beyond weapons, a monument to what humanity could become. "I rebuilt her," Oracle said softly, "piece by piece over 3 centuries. I learned their technologies, Admiral. I learned how to do things that our scientists said were impossible. I learned how to make us strong enough to go home." Stared at the image of her transformed ship. She felt tears on her cheeks but did not bother to wipe them away. Home. Is there even a home to go back to? "I do not know. That does not connect easily to normal space. I cannot see what has happened in the galaxy we left behind." Oracle paused. "But I can open a door. We can return if you wish it." The decision should have been difficult. They had safety here in this strange, dark place. They had power. They could stay forever, learning and growing and becoming something more than human. But Vance had never run from a fight. And somewhere out there, humans were suffering under control. Somewhere out there, her species was waiting to be saved. "Open the door," she said. "We're going home." Oracle nodded. Throughout the ship, systems began to activate. The crew felt the Prometheus come alive around them, felt the incredible power that now flowed through her hull. They did not know what waited for them on the other side. They did not know if humanity still existed or if they were returning to a galaxy of ashes and ghosts. But they were going. After 347 years in the dark, the humans were finally going home. And the galaxy would never be the same. Eli had never seen the sky. He was born in the mines of 7, in the darkness beneath a world that they had stripped of everything valuable except its people. His mother had died when he was young, worked to death in the processing plants where slaves separated precious metals from worthless rock. His father had been taken when Eli was 12, shipped to another world for some unknown crime. Eli had been alone ever since. That was the way of things for humans in the Dominion. You were born, you worked, you died, there was nothing else. Eli was 23 years old, though he looked older. The mines aged everyone. His hands were rough with scars from the cutting tools. His back was bent from years of crawling through tunnels too small for bodies. His eyes had adapted to the darkness so well that bright light gave him headaches. He did not know that humans had once built cities that touched the clouds. He did not know that his ancestors had sailed between the stars in ships of their own making. He did not know that 350 years ago, his species had been free. They had been very thorough in their erasure. Human children were taught nothing of their history. They learned only the language of their masters, only the skills needed for their work, only the prayers that praised the Empress and her eternal dominion. To be human was to be nothing, a tool, a resource, a thing to be used until it broke. But sometimes, in the deepest tunnels where overseers rarely went, Eli found things. Old things. Things that had been buried before the came, when Seven was a human colony world with farms and families and hope. Today, he found something special. It was in a collapsed section of tunnel that he had been sent to clear. The rock had fallen centuries ago, sealing off a chamber that had never been mapped. Eli worked alone with his cutting tool, slicing through stone that crumbled at his touch. When he finally broke through, he found himself in a small room that had once been some kind of storage space. Most of it was destroyed. Water had seeped in over the years, rotting everything that could rot. But in the corner, protected by a metal case that had somehow survived, Eli found a small device. It was a box, no bigger than his palm, made of a material that felt warm even in the cold of the mine. When he touched it, lights flickered across its surface, blues and whites that he had never seen before, colors that did not exist in the darkness where he lived. A symbol was carved into one side, a torch held high, flames reaching upward. And then it spoke. "Emergency beacon activated," said a voice. It was soft, feminine, speaking in a language that Eli almost understood. "This is the United Earth ship Prometheus. If you are receiving this message, please respond. We are coming. Hold on. We are coming." The message repeated over and over. Eli did not know what most of the words meant. He did not know what Earth was or what a ship was or what united could possibly mean. But he understood the last part. "We are coming. Hold on." For the first time in his life, Eli felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it because he had never felt it before. Hope. He hid the beacon in his clothing and returned to his work. He told no one what he had found. He did not know what it meant, but he knew that they would take it from him if they discovered it. They took everything. That was their way. Miles above, in the orbital station that monitored Seven, Commander was dealing with a different kind of problem. "Explain this to me again," he said, staring at his tactical officer with eyes that promised violence. The officer swallowed hard. "Sir, we have lost contact with the 7th Patrol Fleet, 42 ships. They were conducting standard patrols along the outer rim when they simply stopped responding." "Ships do not simply stop responding." "No, sir. We sent a scout vessel to investigate. They found debris. But the energy signatures did not match any known weapon. It was as if the ships had been—" The officer hesitated, searching for the right word. "Unmade." Felt a chill run down his spine. He had served the Dominion for 200 years. He had seen rebellions crushed and species exterminated. He had never felt fear. He felt it now. "Contact High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we may have a situation." Across the galaxy, similar reports were coming in. A supply convoy vanished near the Tellan frontier. A garrison station went dark in the sector. A pursuing smugglers near the dead zone reported strange energy readings before their transmissions cut off mid-sentence. Something was moving through space. Something was hunting them. The Empress herself called a council of her admirals. They gathered in the throne room of Prime, the heart of the Dominion, a chamber of black stone and green fire where the rulers of the galaxy had met for 5,000 years. The Empress sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered kings, her ancient eyes surveying her servants with cold calculation. "Tell me," she said, "what is killing my ships?" No one wanted to answer. Finally, High Admiral stepped forward. He was old now, ancient even by standards, but he still commanded the largest fleet in the Dominion. He still remembered the war against the humans, 3.5 centuries ago. "Your Majesty," he said, "we do not know, but there are rumors." Rumors. Some of the survivor reports mention strange ships, ships that do not match any known design, ships that appear from nowhere and disappear the same way. Paused. Some of the older soldiers are saying it might be the humans. The throne room went silent. The Empress stared at as if he had gone mad. "The humans are extinct," she said. "We made certain of that. We made certain of their fleet, Your Majesty. We made certain of their worlds. But there was one ship we never found, the Prometheus. It vanished during the final battle and was never seen again. That was 350 years ago. Even if that ship survived, its crew would be long dead." "Yes, Your Majesty, unless—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the room was thinking the same thing. Unless they found something, unless they changed, unless they became something else. The Empress waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. The humans were primitives. They could not have survived in the void, and they certainly could not have become a threat to the Dominion. Continue the celebrations as planned. The anniversary of subjugation will proceed on schedule." The admirals bowed and retreated, but as left the throne room, he could not shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. He had spent his life destroying lesser species. He knew what it felt like to be the predator. For the first time in 350 years, he wondered what it felt like to be the prey. On 7, Eli lay in his sleeping cell, clutching the beacon against his chest. The message played softly, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "We are coming. Hold on. We are coming." He did not know who was coming. He did not know if the message was real or just some ancient recording playing to no one, but he held on to it anyway. He held on to it like it was the only light in all the darkness of the mines. And far above the planet, invisible to sensors, a shape moved across the stars. It was massive, larger than anything the Dominion had ever built, larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. It moved without sound, without heat, without any signature that could be detected. The Prometheus had come home, and she was looking for her people. The anniversary of subjugation was the greatest celebration in the Dominion. Every year on the same day, the entire galaxy was required to remember the defeat of humanity. Parades marched through the streets of Prime. Fireworks lit up the skies of 1,000 conquered worlds. Slaves were forced to kneel and give thanks to their masters for allowing them to live. This year, the 350th anniversary, was special. The Empress herself would address the galaxy from the grand platform above Prime, surrounded by the largest gathering of warships in Dominion history. 10,000 vessels filled the space around their hulls gleaming with green fire, their weapons ready to remind the universe who ruled the stars. The Empress stood before a crowd of billions, her image broadcast to every screen in the galaxy. She was ancient, her gray skin stretched tight over bones that had lived for 3,000 years, but her voice was still strong, still filled with the cold pride that had driven her species to conquer everything they touched. 350 years ago, she said, we faced a species that dared to challenge our might. The humans were small, they were weak, they were nothing, but they had the arrogance to believe they could stand against the Dominion. The crowd roared their approval. On worlds across the galaxy, citizens raised their voices in celebration. And in the mines and factories and slave quarters, humans lowered their heads and tried not to weep. We showed them the truth, the Empress continued. We showed them what happens to those who oppose us. Their worlds burned, their fleets fell, their species was erased from history. She spread her arms wide, embracing the fleet behind her. Today, we celebrate that victory. Today, we remind the galaxy that the Dominion is eternal and all who stand against us will be destroyed. The cheering was so loud that it shook the platform. 10,000 ships powered their weapons in salute, filling the sky with green light. And then the sky tore open. It happened without warning. One moment, the space above Prime was filled with the Dominion's greatest fleet. The next moment, reality itself split apart, and something emerged from the wound. The Prometheus. She was beautiful in a way that made the soul hurt to look at her. Her hull seemed to exist in multiple places at once, shifting and flowing like liquid silver. Energies that had no name crackled across her surface, white and gold in colors that did not exist in normal space. She was larger than the biggest dreadnought, larger than the orbital stations that surrounded the planet, larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. And she was alone. For a long moment, no one moved. The fleet stared at the impossible ship that had appeared in their midst. The Empress stood frozen on her platform, her ancient face showing something that might have been fear. Even the crowd had gone silent, their cheers dying in their throats. Then High Admiral found his voice. All ships open fire, destroy that thing. 10,000 weapons fired at once. Missiles, plasma beams, antimatter torpedoes. Every destructive force the Dominion had ever created screamed toward the Prometheus in a wall of green death. It was enough firepower to crack a moon in half. It was enough destruction to end a civilization. The weapons passed through the Prometheus like light through water. Not around her, not deflected, through her. The ship seemed to become transparent for a moment, letting the attacks continue harmlessly into empty space. Then she again, completely undamaged as if nothing had happened. Admiral Vance stood on her bridge, watching the fleet scramble in confusion. She looked older than she had been. 3 centuries of life, even in stasis, had left their mark. But her eyes were calm, her voice steady. "Oracle," she said, "open a channel, all frequencies." "Channel open, Admiral." Stepped forward, and her image appeared on every screen in the galaxy. In slave quarters and command centers, in throne rooms and mine shafts, every being in the Dominion saw the face of a human woman who should have been dead 350 years ago. "My name is Admiral Vance," she said. "I am the commander of the United Earth ship Prometheus. 350 years ago you tried to destroy my species. You burned our worlds. You killed our families. You thought you had erased us from existence." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You were wrong." On Prime, the Empress finally found her voice. "Destroy them. All ships, destroy them now." The fleet moved to attack. Thousands of vessels converged on the Prometheus, their weapons charging for another volley. They were going to overwhelm her with numbers, surround her so completely that she could not escape. Did not seem concerned. "Oracle, show them what we've learned." The Prometheus acted. There was no other word for it. She did not fire weapons in any normal sense. She simply acted, and things changed. A wing of destroyers suddenly found themselves somewhere else, folded into a pocket dimension where they could see normal space but could not touch it. A that was charging their main guns discovered that their weapons had been transformed into something harmless, their antimatter cores now filled with nothing but light and air. A single dreadnought that came too close simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not damaged, unmade as if it had never been built at all. The fleet broke. Ships that had conquered 1,000 worlds turned and fled from a single vessel. They scattered in every direction, desperate to escape the thing that had come for them. Within minutes, the greatest military force in the galaxy was in full retreat. And the Prometheus let them go. "Admiral," said Oracle, "the fleet is withdrawing. We could pursue. We could end them." Shook her head. "No, that's not why we're here." On the grand platform, the Empress was being rushed to safety by her guards. His image still filled every screen, and now she spoke directly to the ancient ruler of the Dominion. "We did not come back for revenge," said. "We could destroy your entire fleet. We could burn your worlds the way you burned ours. We could make thee as forgotten as you tried to make humanity." Her voice hardened. "But we are not you. We did not spend 3 centuries in the dark learning how to kill. We learned how to be something better." She turned slightly, as if speaking to someone beyond the camera. "We came back for our people. Every human in the Dominion, every slave, every prisoner, every child who has never known freedom, we are coming for you. They cannot stop us. Nothing can stop us now." On 7, in his tiny cell, Eli heard these words and did not understand them. But he understood the feeling behind them. He understood that something had changed, something massive and beautiful and terrifying. He pulled out his beacon, the one that had been repeating its message for 350 years. As he watched, the lights flickered and changed, and a new message played. "This is the Prometheus. We have returned. All human survivors remain where you are. We are coming to bring you home." Eli started to cry. He had never cried before, there had never been any point. But now tears ran down his face, and for the first time in his life, he was not afraid. Above his world, the sky tore open again. Ships emerged, dozens of them, hundreds of them, all growing from the Prometheus like seeds from a flower. They descended through the atmosphere, passing through defense systems as if they did not exist. The first ship landed near the mines. Its hull opened, and figures walked out, humans, dressed in uniforms that Eli did not recognize, moving with a confidence he had never seen in his species. One of them approached him. She was tall, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to hold the light of distant stars. She looked at his hands, his bent back, his eyes that had adapted to the darkness. "I am Commander Tors," she said softly. "I served on the Prometheus when your ancestors were still free." She extended her hand. "Come with me. It's time to go home." Eli looked at her hand. He looked at the ship behind her, glowing with light that did not hurt his eyes. He looked up at the sky, where more ships were descending, where patrol vessels were fleeing in panic, where everything he had ever known was changing. He took her hand. And for the first time in 350 years, a human walked out of slavery and into the light. 1 year after the return, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Dominion, which had ruled for 5,000 years, had simply collapsed. Not conquered, the Prometheus had not destroyed a single inhabited world. But when your weapons pass through your enemy like water through a net, when your fleets scatter at the sight of a single ship, when your slaves look at you without fear for the first time in centuries, your power means nothing. They had ruled through strength. Now they had no strength, and their subjects remembered every cruelty, every death, every moment of suffering. The Empress fled to the outer reaches of the galaxy, taking what remained of her loyal fleet with her. Some worlds surrendered peacefully, their people tired of endless war and conquest. Others fell into chaos as former slave species rose up against their masters. The greatest empire the galaxy had ever known crumbled like sand in the wind. Admiral Vance watched it all from the observation deck of the Prometheus, orbiting a world that had once been called Earth. The planet was healing. When the Prometheus had arrived, Earth was a dead world, oceans boiled away, continents scorched to glass, atmosphere thick with the ash of the cities that had burned 3.5 centuries ago. They had been thorough in their destruction. They had wanted to make sure that humanity could never return. But Oracle had learned things she had learned how to rebuild what was broken, how to breathe life back into the dead. The Prometheus and her fleet worked for months, using technologies that seemed like magic to reshape the planet. Now, green was spreading across the continents again. Water flowed in rivers that had been dust. Seeds planted by human hands were growing into forests. Earth would live again, but it would take generations to truly recover, and was not sure she would live to see it. "Admiral," said Oracle's voice from everywhere and nowhere, "the representatives are arriving." Nodded and straightened her uniform. Today was the first meeting of the new Galactic Assembly, a gathering of every species that had survived the Dominion. Humans would be there, of course, but so would the Tellan, the scattered survivors of a dozen other civilizations that they had conquered or nearly destroyed. They were coming to decide what kind of galaxy they wanted to build. And they were afraid of humanity. Understood why. The Prometheus had done impossible things. Her crew had changed during their centuries in that they could see things that normal beings could not see, do things that normal beings could not do. The ship herself was a weapon beyond weapons, capable of rewriting reality with a thought. If humanity wanted to rule the galaxy, no one could stop them. The assembly chamber was a great dome on the surface of Earth, built by Oracle in a matter of days. Representatives from 30 species sat in a circle, watching as walked to the center. She could feel their fear, their hope, their uncertainty. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment. 350 years ago, she began, my species was destroyed. Our worlds burned. Our people were scattered and enslaved. We had no hope, no future, no chance of survival. She paused, looking at each representative in turn. We survived anyway. We found a place outside of normal space, a place where we could learn and grow and become something more than we were. We could have stayed there forever. We could have left the galaxy to its suffering and built our own paradise in the dark. Her voice hardened. But that is not what humanity is. We do not abandon those who suffer. We do not turn away from those who need help. We came back because that is who we are, not conquerors, not tyrants, but people who believe that every being deserves to be free. The chamber was silent, could see the representatives exchanging glances, uncertain where this was going. Some of you are afraid of us, she continued. I understand. We have power that you cannot comprehend, technologies that seem like magic. If we wanted to rule the galaxy, we could. No fleet could stop us. No weapon could touch us. She smiled slightly. But we do not want to rule. We have seen what empires do. We have seen them crush everything beautiful in their path, destroy everything they could not control. We will not become what we fought against. We will not replace one tyrant with another. Raised her hand, and a projection appeared in the air above her, a glowing display of the technologies the Prometheus had gathered in the energy systems that could power worlds for, medical devices that could heal any wound, ships that could cross the galaxy in days. This is what we have learned, she said, and we are going to share it. Every technology, every discovery, every bit of knowledge we gathered in the dark, it belongs to everyone. We will teach you what we know. We will help you build new worlds, new fleets, new futures, not as masters but as partners. A Tellan representative spoke up, his voice trembling. Why would you give away such power? Considered the question. It was the question that everyone was thinking, the question that defined what kind of species humanity would be. Because power is not the measure of a people, she said finally. They had power. They used it to destroy and enslave. We could do the same. We could burn their worlds in revenge, crush them the way they crushed us. Some of my crew wanted that. Some of them still do. She shook her head. But we spent 300 years in the darkness, learning from beings who were old when the first stars were born. And the most important thing we learned was this: the strongest civilizations are not the ones that conquer. They are the ones that lift others up. They are the ones that share what they have, that build instead of destroy, that choose mercy when they could choose vengeance. She looked directly at the Tellan representative. We are giving away this power because we trust you to use it well, because we believe that you deserve the chance to grow, just as we did, because we know that a galaxy full of free peoples is stronger than any empire built on fear. The chamber erupted into noise, questions, arguments, expressions of disbelief and hope. Let them talk. She had said what needed to be said. Now the galaxy would have to decide what to do with it. Later that night, stood alone on the observation deck of the Prometheus, looking down at the earth below. Green forests, blue oceans, cities being built on the bones of the old ones. You did well, said Oracle's voice. Did I? Asked. I gave away everything we had. If they turn against us, if they decide they want our technology without our friendship, then we will deal with that when it happens, but I do not think it will. Oracle paused. I spent 3 centuries watching you sleep, Admiral. 3 centuries learning what humanity truly is. And what I learned is that your species is not defined by your power or your technology. You are defined by your hope, by your belief that things can be better, by your refusal to give up, even when everything is lost. Oracle's voice softened. That is why I rebuilt the ship. That is why I learned everything I could. Not to create a weapon, but to give humanity a second chance. And watching you today, watching you choose mercy over vengeance, partnership over dominion, I believe I made the right choice." Smiled, the first real smile she had allowed herself in a long time. "We still have a long way to go, Oracle. They are still out there. Half the humans we rescued don't even know their own history, and the other species still don't fully trust us." "No," Oracle agreed. "But you have time now. You have safety and you have hope. That is more than you had 350 years ago." Down on the surface, in one of the new cities being built on Earth, Eli stood at a window and watched the sunset. It was his first sunset, the first time he had ever seen the sky change colors, the first time he had ever watched day turn to night without the ceiling of a mine blocking his view. He still carried the old beacon in his pocket. He did not need it anymore. The message had stopped playing the day the Prometheus arrived. But he kept it as a reminder of the darkness he had survived, a reminder of the hope that had kept him alive, a reminder that his people had never given up. Commander Tors found him there, standing in the fading light. She was old now, over 400 years old, counting her time in stasis, but she still moved with the same confidence she had shown when she first found him in the mines. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Eli considered the question. "I'm thinking about what the Admiral said, about how the strongest civilizations are the ones that lift others up. And I'm thinking that I want to help." He turned to face her. "I spent my whole life in the dark, believing I was nothing. Now I know that's not true. I know that my ancestors built ships that sailed between the stars. I know that my species refused to die even when everything was against them." He squared his shoulders. "I want to help build what comes next. I want to help teach the children who were born in slavery about what we really are. I want to make sure that no human ever forgets how we survived and what we chose to do with our survival." Tors smiled. It was a warm expression full of pride and hope. "We could use people like you," she said. "People who remember the darkness and choose the light anyway." Above them, the Prometheus hung in orbit, her hull glowing softly against the stars. She had been a warship once, built for destruction. Now she was something else, a symbol, a promise, a reminder of what humanity could become when they refused to let the universe defeat them. And far out in the galaxy, in places where they had once ruled supreme, former slaves were looking up at the stars with new eyes. They were learning about the species that had been erased from history, the humans who had disappeared and returned more powerful than anyone had ever feared. They were hearing stories about a ship that had traveled through impossible darkness and emerged carrying hope. They were dreaming of a future that had once seemed impossible. And in the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. Not power, not technology, not the ability to reshape reality itself. It was the simple, stubborn, unshakable belief that no matter how dark things got, there was always a way forward. There was always hope. And hope, as the humans had proven, could survive anything.